We all started out as band social development workers working in our own communities. And in those days, it was only the Ministry of Children and Families that did the child protection in our communities. And although we were involved because we had to live and work in our communities, really we dealt with all of the social problems in our communities, and child welfare was one of them.
First Nations communities really didn't have any power to keep the ministry from apprehending children at their will and losing out on the nurturing of families and relatives.
In working in a First Nations community, we're dealing with different realities than the mainstream child welfare services.
The elders saw that there was too many of our children being taken care out of their communities, and hence worked with the elected chiefs to start developing some plans to assume more control and authority over family and child services.
There needs to be a strong policy change around ensuring that Aboriginal people in the province have a greater stake at planning for their children, not only on reserve but off reserve as well.
Because, before, when Indian Affairs handled all our affairs, everything that controlled our lives was through the Department of Indian Affairs, and our people never had a say in anything, not just in child welfare.
I think one of the issues that always was at the forefront was ensuring that the Aboriginal voice was at those tables, because history had shown and continues to show that cultural awareness to child welfare is a key component to ensuring the success of Aboriginal people in care.
I think there were a number of different challenges. I think the vast distance of the province, right? And there wasn't a cohesive, nonprofit in the province that had tried this before.
Most of the social workers did not have degree level skills or education, and so we were looking for training opportunities. Also, we were looking at how to impact policy and funding.
Basically, there was no advocacy for family and child services, for health services. We basically got the mandate from the chiefs to start looking at policy, to start developing plans and strategies to advance family and child services for First Nations.
And at that time, a group of us in the Lower Mainland would get together at conferences and so on and talk about common concerns and issues in our practice at the First Nations level.
We would get together just informally a lot of times to talk about that, and we said, we really need to have an association that we can come together and work on these common issues. And we really needed to have collaboration and support with each other because this work is very difficult.
And that was where we got the direction to basically create the society. And so we had got together and just trying to find the funding to create the society and getting the purpose in place.
Because we were the first, I had to go across Canada to talk to some of the agencies like in Manitoba and in New Brunswick and different provinces that already had child welfare, and they had child welfare for about 30 years prior to British Columbia. So I had to do a lot of research and meeting with people to get ideas of some of the reasons why they took over child welfare and how they were going to do it differently, because we knew that we wanted to do something different than the province of British Columbia.
In other words, involve the people. The whole history of Aboriginal people and families has been non-involvement because it was taken away. The right to exist, practice your own ways and your own culture and your own ways of living were taken away. That needs to come back, so people need to realize that, hey, there are some things we can do to look after our own children. We need not have to have this the state so directly involved in this area, if at all.
Also, being a strong voice for First Nations and Aboriginal communities.
To get that door open, even a crack at the beginning, to be heard. Because it's very rigid and very controlled by powers to be, and you don't know who those powers are.
Yeah, just kind of being recognized by, at that time, government, that we did have a voice, that we were equal, in terms of the ministry social workers to then the First Nations.
Because without it, there would be ministry chaining, right? And it would be just basically your status quo, right? There would be no indigenizing the social work.
The main reason why we took over Child and Family Services was because we wanted to ensure our children were not removed from their families and their communities and their culture.
We tend to, in mainstream, prescribe to people with needs as what they should do and what kind of services they should have. And instead of prescribing, I think we need to come back and we need to ask them as users of the service, what kinds of services would help you most, and start from there, and then build those services so that children can stay at home.
The problem is that even with delegation, right, if you do not have the capacity to provide the supports, right, you're not doing the children any justice, right? A waiting list is not a service, right, and it's to fill that void.
Just the recognition that there are people of First Nations people, society or board of directors that are caring.
We now have 24 Aboriginal First Nations agencies in the province, from one in the 1980s. So I think we've come a long way in terms of developing those child welfare services in communities. But there's still a long ways to go in terms of filling the gaps of services. We need to ensure that our workforce is trained and educated on an ongoing basis. So really developing the people and the families and supporting families, and ensuring that they're healthy and happy, and if they are, then then the children will be.